Usually when a piece of media becomes popular, it is for its story, well-written characters, or maybe even unique world building. Maybe a manga hits all the right boxes for popular tropes and is done in a fun and engaging way. But what makes a manga become popular before it even gets started? We've seen this happen twice now in the past couple of years. The first, and I think most notable, was Kagurabachi, a newer Shonen Jump title that became popular kind of as a meme due to its stereotypical, generic, edgy tropes. I've heard that the manga is actually pretty good and has really interesting world building and power systems, but this video is not about Kagurabachi. Kagurabachi was memed to hell and back in a similar way to the movie Morbius, something people thought was going to be bad, so bad in fact that it was funny to joke about it being good, and it became a pop culture moment due to people being silly. However, there has been a second premature popularity plane to hit the manga towers. Magical Girl Dandelion, a new series about, you guessed it, magical girls. I want to say, at the time of writing this and recording this, there are only 5 chapters out, with the 6th chapter coming out in just a day or two, according to the Viz app. We only have essentially 1 volume of this series so far, and I can say that it is really good and deserving of the buzz. But what is Magical Girl Dandelion, and why did it generate popularity before a single ounce of story was even released? Unlike Kagurabachi, Magical Girl Dandelion's rise to popularity was a bit more genuine and enthusiastic. It was not ironic posting about a new series, calling it the best ever just for shits and giggles. It was a genuine admiration for the character designs. I mean, I think it speaks for itself here. Tanpopo's design is cute, and her almost monochromatic yellowy orange design is very eye-catching, and provides the perfect amount of visual contrast to Shade, the shadowy figure who serves as a protector to her. Her warmth, his coolness, her round frills, his angular and simple silhouette, they complement one another very, very well. For many of us online, it was love at first sight, adoration for Tanpopo's cute design, and a bit of interest in Shade generated by his seemingly mischievous vibes and attractive design. He's like a Tumblr sexy man, and the girlies love a Tumblr sexy man. However, it is also worth noting, this is the first new classic Magical Girl series that wasn't Precure, basically, that we have gotten in a long time. Many semi-recent titles in the Magical Girl genre were more concerned with deconstructing what it means to be a magical girl, trying to be the next Madoka Magica. So a fresh, new, classic Magical Girl series was something that the community had been craving. That alone was at least several points in favor of Magical Girl Dandelion for many Magical Girl connoisseurs. The excitement for a new Magical Girl series and the interest in character designs motivated artists to create fan art for this new series, generating more buzz and excitement. Because if this new manga was cool enough to inspire others to create art, it has to be worth checking out, right? Okay, so what exactly does this manga have to offer so far? In the world of Magical Girl Dandelion, there are monsters called fiends that hunt and feed on humans, and magical girls are humanity's only hope. Magic is innate to a magical girl, and when it starts to look like she will awaken and bloom into her powers, a magical girl is approached by a government organization called Butterfly that handles the training and governing of magical girls. It's like a government agency, pretty much. However, there is a twist. Our main character is best friends with a fiend who protects her and fights off other fiends. And to complicate things further, Tanpopo, our main girl here, learns that she has great potential to become a magical girl. She wants to help others and is initially excited about this development, but Shade, the fiend bestie at her side, is surprisingly unsupportive. He's extremely opposed, claiming that he'll be her enemy if she transforms. A conflict of good and evil, and a person or being that contradicts all of that. It's a concept we love to see, and I think most people eat it up every time it's in a piece of fiction. The idea of losing a close friend and having such high risks involved with chasing one's dream is also captivating for audiences. There's a lot to this setup that draws the reader in. What do you mean the thing that has been protecting Tanpopo and the person she's been closest to for most of her life is at risk of turning on her? Shade has a very fascinating setup. The looming protector who almost shelters Tanpopo from the world. He seems like a ride or die kind of guy, but as soon as that's established, the unconditional support is seemingly stripped away. How will our main leads handle this? Outside of that conflict, the dynamic between the optimistic, naive Tanpopo and the more cynical and teasing Shade is very fun to read, and many shoujo fans are excited to see a dynamic like this be played out platonically for once, according to the creator of this series. So with the series that kind of became an overnight sensation online, it made sense that English publishers would take the gamble and profit off of this viral sensation. And when I say viral, do keep in mind that because of inaccessibility and, let's be real, misogyny, shoujo manga is a lot more niche as a whole compared to other demographics of manga. So viral in shoujo circles is not going to be as big, and also shoujo circles tend to be very self-contained. So if you have not heard of this before, believe me when I say it really, really made the rounds. It's kind of like how there's different sides to TikTok, and going viral on gay TikTok doesn't mean that people on conservative TikTok are gonna see you, and vice versa. Just 1 month after the first chapter of Magical Girl Dandelion was published, it was announced that Viz Media would be releasing the simulpub English translation of the series on their manga reading app. Which is very slay, and considering it is a brand new title with no established reader base beyond buzz online, that's really cool. They're taking a gamble on a series that hasn't even proven itself in Japan yet. Okay, so I would like to take a deeper look at the chapters we have so far, so consider this the spoiler zone for people who want to go in blind. By the time you are watching this, there are at least 6 chapters out, most of which, at the time, are free to read on Viz, likely because of, there not being many chapters. And the thing about the Viz manga app is the first, 3 to 4 sometimes, the first 3 to 4 chapters are free to read, and the most recent couple of simulpub chapters are free to read. So when there's not that many, the entire thing is free. For now, that is most definitely going to be changing soon. I am only going to be talking about the first 5 chapters because that's all that is out to me at the time of making this video, and also chapter 5 kind of wraps up a mini arc and it's just a nice place to stop. It's also not enough story to feel like I'm going to spoil the series at large, since the first few chapters are essentially just setting up the world, and the twists and turns in the early stages are mostly to generate interest as the series is gaining its footing. I do genuinely believe what I'm about to spoil and discuss is just the stepping stones that will set up the greater narrative. And if this series had been going on for longer, everything we're about to talk about would not even be considered spoilers, and would likely be included in a summary given to recommend the series. So, final warning for spoilers for those who care. Everyone else that's left, you guys are just like me. You either don't care about spoilers or you just love rehashing something you've already read. So without further ado, let's actually sink our teeth into Magical Girl Dandelion. Things start out with a flashback to the day Tanpopo and Shade met. This establishes how vital Shade has been to her entire life. Their meeting is her earliest memory, and it is a bloody day of tragedy. Tanpopo's family had been attacked by a fiend and her parents were killed. But before Tanpopo could also get killed, a shadowy fiend as dark as night showed up and saved her, defeating the fiend that attacked her parents and vowing to keep her safe from here on out. This source of shadow was a beacon of hope and light within Tanpopo's life. In the present day, Tanpopo is 16 and in her first year of high school. We also get some exposition to magical girls as Tanpopo sees them on the news. Magical girls, who seem to all be named after flowers, by the way, protect humans from the cruelty of fiends, the monsters that feed on humans. At least that's what everyone believes. Just as exposition is getting ready to doubt what we've already been told about this world, Tanpopo trips, taking a huge tumble down some stairs. But before she actually falls down, it seems she is able to catch herself, making a miraculous recovery. Tanpopo knows that it wasn't her ability, though. She runs off to someplace more private where she can talk to the shadows without being judged. She thanks Shade for helping her, but Shade is more interested in teasing her. This sets up their dynamic of Shade always being there for her, but also basically being like an older sibling, always poking at her, and it's really cute. It's very fun. Without Shade, Tanpopo would be splatted out, or in his words, an iron rust-flavored ketchup party. What a way to talk about blood and a person potentially dying. Tanpopo is the only one who can see and communicate with Shade, which is a bit awkward since he is her friend and has been basically forever. There's special care in showing us that while Shade is a fiend, he is very human in his kindness and his relationship with Tanpopo. He cares deeply for her, and despite being playfully antagonistic, is always there for her and is a great source of positivity in her life. And he's got a quiet kindness to him that extends to strangers, going out of his way to help a child recover her lost teddy bear. Shade is a fiend, yes, but everything we've seen from him so far is very heroic and kind and just the good parts of humanity. A direct conflict to what has been established about fiends as a whole, showing that there are some monsters out there who deserve to be humanized, and establishing that Tanpopo believes this. Tanpopo also knows that Shade lies to her about what he does during the day to protect her. From what? We don't exactly know just yet, but she has some ideas, but it's left up for speculation to the readers for now. At school, Tanpopo is called into the office where representatives of the Magical Girl agency Butterfly are here to see her. They straight up just ask her if she wants to be a magical girl, no introductions, no hello. The way magical girls are talked about here, they don't seem to be your typical Sailor Moon, middle school girl fighting crime in secret, kind of. Instead, they're warriors, or soldiers that are pretty much a special unit of the Ministry of Defense. They've militarized magical girls out here. Also, Peony's uniform screams military outfit, like that's just her whole vibe. So that's interesting. This is also when we learn that the school tests magical potential, I think, every year, making it somewhat of a standardized thing that gets tracked. The average person gets around 100. Tanpopo scored 5,791. She's already on par with magical girls that fight on the front lines. She's got so much potential, and she's just truly built different. Tanpopo can't believe it. She's shocked that her, of all people, can become a magical girl. But her mind is already made up, and she cannot wait to share the news with her bestie, Shade. Tanpopo is extremely excited about the idea of helping Shade fight off the fiends, and thinks that it is something he would be happy about too. She wants to help others. She has that kind potential in her heart, but her biggest, goal here is to just be closer with Shade, to help Shade, and to fight by his side. When she's finally able to share the news with Shade, he deflects. What is she even talking about? A fiend that kills other fiends? This is what Tanpopo thinks Shade has been lying about, but he does not want to be honest with her about this. Going to see a movie? Nah, that man is off fighting crime. Allegedly. Tanpopo is no longer the helpless child that Shade needs to protect, and she desperately wants to prove herself to him. Shade seems to attack her though, talking down to her and trying to scare her out of being a magical girl. He explains that he did all of those kind things out of pity, and he just took pity on her life because he felt like it. He tries to downplay the good things he has done and make himself out as a cruel creature. If Tanpopo is to be a magical girl, that makes him her sworn enemy. Because, in case she's forgotten, he's a fiend, a villain. But the scary shadow has been Tanpopo's best friend and her hero for her entire life. He was always there for her, cheering her up when she was sad and taking on the role of a parentified older sibling specifically. I do want to iterate, he is not a parental figure, but something more akin to Nana from Lilo and Stitch. Very clearly the dynamic of someone a bit older stepping up and doing what they can to replace dead or absent parents. That's the vibe it gives me, at least. Tanpopo seems to be treating this confrontation with Shade more like a falling out with a friend than a confrontation with a monster. A week goes by where she doesn't see or hear from him, and she's worried that Shade didn't actually reciprocate her friendship. As she's walking through town, Tanpopo comes across a person being attacked by a fiend, and these fiends are gruesome. I'll be the first to admit, I may not have actually read or watched many Magical Girl series, so I always forget that they often are a bit dark and gory. It's easy to forget that there is violence and horror in Magical Girl series because they're often painted with this pink sparkly hue and girly vibes, and I don't know, even though I know those things are not mutually exclusive, I think a lot of us still just think about them in very separate boxes. Very, very different aesthetics. A man is literally sitting here watching a creature tear apart and eat another person, who was likely a friend of his, or at least somebody he knew. Remembering how Shade talked down to her, Tanpopo steps up and aims to protect this stranger from the fiend, hoping to prove herself not only to Shade, but also to herself. If she can save this person, then everything Shade said about her was not true. Tanpopo wields her umbrella as a weapon, and she stands strong, brave as ever, but she is quickly taken down. The fiend slices through her umbrella like it's nothing. It reaches for her, and she's the fiend's next meal. But before it can actually harm her, Shade appears to save her life. He apologizes, saying he stuck around longer than he should have. He's attached to her now and deeply, deeply cares about Tanpopo's well-being. He wants her to stay far away from the pain and suffering, from the darkness of the world. I do think part of him regrets getting so close to Tanpopo, and he sees their friendship as something that could potentially drag her into the dark depths of the world he wishes to protect her from. Her closeness to him gives her an entry into the world of fiends, and he does not want her to know about this world. Her becoming a magical girl would put her in danger and expose her to more things Shade wants Tanpopo to avoid. But if he didn't stick around, if he didn't become her friend, he wouldn't have these feelings. He wouldn't care. He would not be so invested in her happiness or her safety. And he also wouldn't be around to serve as a way into this dangerous world. Tanpopo does not care about any of that though. She just wants to be by Shade's side. This emotional moment serves as the catalyst to her awakening. Tanpopo blossoms. Dandelion blossoms. And she is powerful. There is now nothing Shade can do to stop Tanpopo from becoming a magical girl. She collapses after the surge of energy, and for a moment she can feel Shade's arm, something she has never been able to do before. Magical Girl Peony catches Shade and attacks, demanding he unhands Dandelion, since she is a valuable asset. Shade is willing to defend Tanpopo with his life though, and he's gotta be cocky about it. Afterwards, while Tanpopo is recovering, we are introduced to her grandfather, who is also her caretaker, a man who cares greatly about her and a family member she loves and respects. We see moments of their close bond, establishing her grandfather as someone we should care about. Shade also seems to be accepting of Tanpopo being a magical girl now that she has awakened, but it's never going to be that simple or easy, is it now? We do not know why at first, but Shade is very, very against Tanpopo working for Butterfly and being an acting magical girl. He sabotages her every step of the way, causing her to underperform, and after a while, if she were to keep underperforming, she would be let go and wouldn't get to be a full-fledged magical girl. Shade supports her, but he also doesn't. He'll keep her safe from harm's way, but that doesn't include the ways that he harms her. Let me be clear though, he's not actually harming her or putting her in danger, just ruining her future in the name of protecting her, which in a way is harmful. But considering all the harm we're talking about, it is a world of a difference between what Shade is doing and the things he's protecting her from. I'm trying to make Shade not sound like that bad of a guy, because I know I'm going to be defending him with my life this entire series. Shade is this weird force in the first few chapters, because we don't exactly know what he's hiding, but it's clear there's something he wants to keep from Tanpopo. From Tanpopo's own words and memories, Shade is a really good friend, someone who cares for her and is always there for her. But his actions are starting to contradict that. However, he also often contradicts himself, stepping in to save her and at the end of the day supporting her to some degree. It's almost as if Shade has an internal conflict about his status as a fiend who is friends with a magical girl, and he believes that Tanpopo being a magical girl will become a source of pain for her and possibly even a strain in their friendship. There's also a bit of conflict with Peony knowing about Shade and figuring out that Shade and Tanpopo are friends, but this hasn't been given much space to breathe and become a big issue yet, but I do see this becoming a very big conflict, at least in the near future for the early stages of the overarching plot. All of this does fall to the wayside though, once Tanpopo learns that she has bigger things to worry about. One day, as she returns home from school, she finds her grandfather transforming into a fiend. This is when Shade confirms to all of us that fiends were once human beings. These man-eating monsters were once man themselves. And that raises the question, at what point do fiends lose their humanity? Tanpopo is distraught, and she begins to see why Shade did not want her to be a magical girl. He didn't want her to know that fiends were once human. He didn't want her to experience this suffering, this grief, this turmoil. She can't handle it. Peony shows up, ready to slay Tanpopo's grandfather before he completes his transformation and harms others. I want to make it clear, I don't think Peony is in the wrong here. She's doing the best with the information she has. And while she is being geared up to be an antagonistic force, I don't think she's in the wrong. Tanpopo, though, does not want her to kill her grandfather. Instead, she thinks she might be able to save him. He's not done transforming, and if she can purify his core, then he'll revert back to a human. Determined to save her grandfather and willing to accept that she has to kill him if she can't, Tanpopo steps up and deploys her magic. And miraculously, it works. Peony can't believe it, and it seems to me like this is something that has never been done before. Shade seems to have some conflicting emotions about this, though, and we see a flashback to when he was turned into a fiend. A traumatized child who couldn't be seen or heard by his parents, or anyone. A boy who was considered missing, but he was right there this whole time. Banished to the shadows and alone. He'd too begged for help once. Tanpopo's light is so bright that Shade finds her blinding. And now she's rocked his world with the concept of turning fiends back into humans. This concept is really fascinating to me. The idea of humans becoming monsters is not new, nor is the idea that people can recover. But usually in fantasy such as this one, once a human becomes a monster, it is too late to save them. In Madoka Magica, we learn that witches were once magical girls who became corrupt, and by the time they reach becoming a witch, it's just simply too late to reverse that darkness, too late to save them. And it seems to me that up until Tanpopo saved her grandfather, those same rules applied to Magical Girl Dandelion's universe, at least publicly. It was either that or the government agency didn't consider people who were turning into fiends worth saving. And this sets up two very fascinating plot directions. We're either going to go on a journey of breakthroughs and discoveries as Tanpopo tries to save as many people as possible, uncovering more about the mysteries of fiends. Or we go on a journey where the government knew this was possible and Tanpopo begins to uncover corruption as she tries to make a case for the humanity of fiends. Or maybe we get a big mixing pot of both. It is too early to tell, but I do see either of those directions being very plausible potential plot directions, basically. But on a much more micro scale, Shade has to figure out what this means for him. Tanpopo's grandfather is recovering nicely and her purification seemed to work. So does that mean she could make Shade human again? Does he even want to be human again? When Tanpopo asks, Shade puts up a front. He's grown used to his new shadow body, and he laughs at the idea of Tanpopo saving him, not Tanpopo trying to reverse the tables. Shade claims to enjoy some perks of his shadow form, and it's hard for me to tell just yet if Shade is actually having an internal conflict about this, or if I and Tanpopo are projecting these feelings onto him. He does seem very used to his form and very natural in his fiendish ways, and also he seems to have retained a lot of his humanity that some of the fiends we have seen so far have not. So there's a lot to consider for Shade's situation. Shade approaches things with a level of confidence and a laid-back attitude that also does not leave much room for him to show emotional vulnerability. He's Tanpopo's protector. She's not his therapist. Sure, they're friends, but their friendship seems to be more about him helping her, and he does not want that to change. He doesn't want that dynamic to flip in any way. Before they can really dive into this conversation, though, a fiend attacks at Tanpopo's school, dragging unsuspecting students into a mirror world. It's also an Alice in Wonderland themed fiend. Oh, we are so back. There is a level of genuine horror here as Tanpopo runs around helping her classmates until she herself is pulled into the mirror world. She's the special guest of honor to the tea party, and all the other guests are decaying corpses. The big bad of this fiend attack is basically a child, and the Alice of this world. And he treats the situation like a game. The guests aren't dead to him, they're just sleeping. He's just trying to not be lonely. Parties are supposed to be lively. I won't get too into it, but the action in this mini-arc is really cool. Tanpopo and Shade both fight from within the mirror world and beyond to try to get this sorted, and there are times where it really does feel like Tanpopo may actually lose. The stakes feel high, and she lacks the experience to really make it through this without a tremendous struggle. Tanpopo is racing against the clock. The longer she stays in this mirror world, the more her life force gets drained until she too will end up like a corpse decorating the tea party. Shade eventually is able to make it into the mirror world, here to rescue Tanpopo. Since shadows are his domain, that does mean he can travel freely into the mirror world, and he's just built different. Shade is able to transfer some of his life force to Tanpopo so she can keep fighting, and she eventually defeats the March Hare and, in turn, Alice. The March Hare being basically the big scary guard dog that Alice was sicking on everyone. As they defeat Alice, Tanpopo learns that she cannot save everyone, but what she can do is validate the humanity within fiends and be a source of comfort for them in their final moments. She can be a friend to Alice, a lonely boy who wanted nothing more than the companionship of friends. Shade does not know if Tanpopo really saved Alice back there, but he does know she kept him from dying alone, and she was his friend in the end. And that's all he wanted. Tanpopo wants to save everyone. She wants to help humans and fiends alike, and if Tanpopo is going to put herself out there trying to save everyone, Shade is gonna have to protect her too, becoming a hero in his own right, even if he won't call it that. Tanpopo sees Shade as a hero though, and I think in turn a lot of the readers do as well, or we're at least led to that conclusion if we want to make it. And Tanpopo wants to be like Shade. And our story blossoms, a tale of light and shadow intertwined. This sets up for Tanpopo's big ambitions and shows us just how large Tanpopo's heart is, and how much empathy she has for those who are suffering. We also see that Shade is pretty much all talk when it comes to his more antagonistic ways, at least when Tanpopo is concerned. Also, staging Shade as the darkness and Tanpopo as the light sets us up for the two completing one another, being two sides of the same coin. And I feel like this manga could easily take that idea and apply it to magical girls and fiends as a whole, seemingly opposite sides that have much more in common than initially thought, or two things that are fundamentally similar and one needing the other to exist. You can't cast shadow without light, or whatever it is they say. I am incredibly excited to see where this story goes and how these early themes play out in the long run. So far, it does seem to be another story that takes care in humanizing the monsters that are supposed to be evil, showing that fiends were victims once too, and many of them are scared. Fiends are not that different from you or me, and we could easily end up as the monster in a situation. And I think that's neat. I, for one, am very glad that Magical Girl Dandelion created a buzz online, and I can't wait to keep reading the series as it goes on. It's very fun, and I'm enjoying it. Maybe you'll enjoy it. If you thought any of this was interesting, I highly, highly, highly recommend checking it out. Again, by the time you're watching this, there's likely only 6 chapters out, or maybe more. It just got started in the later half of 2024, so you don't really have much to catch up on. But anyway, I think that's it from me. Talking about a new manga series, love to see it. I don't know what my next video is going to be. I have a few things that I've been cooking or slow burning as I just write whenever I feel like it. So yeah. That's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next video, whatever it may be. Bye.